Again. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Radiyallahu ta'ala anhu wa sarad tabi'ina wa ulama amilina wa a'ima arba'i mujtahideen wa muqalidihim ila yawm ad-din amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Hold on 1 second. I got an idea. Hold on. Before hold on 1 second. Alright, just give me 1 second, inshallah. And just hold tight. Yo, dudes. Say, brother, sit quiet down till after our class is done. Alright. Just give me 1 second, Ikhwan. All right, so just in case it get lost, our host can repost the notes just in case the notes get lost, inshallah. All right, so Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Radiyallahu ta'ala anhu wa sarad tabi'ina wa ulama amilina wa a'ima arba'i mujtahideen wa muqalidihim ila yawm ad-din amma ba'd. All right, so what we're going over is going to be the arkan for zawaj, for marriage. And then we'll talk about those things that will further strengthen the validity of the marriage. So the first thing that's mentioned about this is the wali. A contract, a marriage, al-aqd. Aqd is the word for contract. And like we mentioned last week, I might even give y'all a little quiz on this. Like we mentioned last week, in the aqd, ayn, qaf, del, aqd, right? It is a contract, but it's not a prenup contract. Remember we talked about this last week where people will make all these requests within the contract, if my husband takes another wife, then I get to divorce him. If he loses his job and doesn't retain employment within 90 days, I can divorce myself from this marriage, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? This isn't the case. This is usually done at the kitaba. Matter of fact, the marriage proposal is a big deal in Islam, where the two parties sit down and they get engaged. That's actually something that's usually announced. And it's forbidden for someone to propose to someone that's already been proposed to. All right. Now, so the wali, the guardian, a marriage is not valid without a wali. And the conditions have to be met to be a wali. Firstly, on the behalf of the wali, the guardian, and then the ward. The guardian, he has to be compatible deen-wise, right? He has to be Muslim. A non-Muslim cannot give away a Muslim lady, right? A non-Muslim cannot give away a Muslim lady in marriage. And neither can a Muslim give away a non-Muslim in marriage except a prospective bride that's either his slave girl, right? Or the ward, or he's the guardian of this person. These he can give out in marriage. The other thing about the wali has to have his freedom. He can't be a servant, a person that's locked up in servitude. Therefore, the person has to be freed. He has to be somewhat autonomous or a freed person in order to contract a marriage, right? Now, just to mention just a few things. Hold on one second. I'm just reading over this real quick. A person without intellect, someone that's mentally impaired, or someone in a temporary state of mental impairment, maybe by intoxicants, etc., he cannot contract a nikah. Right? But he may contract the nikah of his daughter with the permission of his own guardian. Meaning, like for instance, we had a situation here in Philadelphia, or even now the current situation, not just Philadelphia, but this whole thing about mental illness. If a person is really mentally impaired, where they can't make rational decisions, then they have to have a wakil as well. Someone has to be responsible for them. So, it's not just a thing we let them roam about in the streets. You have a certain level of commitment and responsibility, which goes into the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he said every person is a shepherd. Right? All of you are shepherds, right? And you're all responsible for your flock. So even a person that is intellectually impaired or mentally challenged, whatever the case is, they have a guardian as well. They're not to be left alone. The same way that you look over a child is the same way that you would look after them. Of course, if they're an adult, and it all depends on what capacity of their mental impairment, to what capacity, right? But you will have control over their affairs. Sometimes it's referred to as a proxy as well. All right. So anyway, however, they have control over their own daughters, meaning their daughter by birth. What they have to do so with the permission of their own guardian. Other conditions for a wali is that you have to be mature, right? A person that hasn't reached maturity, and one of the signs of maturity is puberty, right? Balagh doesn't mean that you're pubescent. It means that you become mature, meaning you're mukallaf. You're held legally responsible for your behaviors. The person has to have consciousness, and they have to have masculinity. A contract by a woman on herself, it's not acceptable. A woman cannot give another woman away in marriage. It's not acceptable. She should delegate to a man her own marriage contract, and that has to be a free person. She has to. A male has to represent her. Bottom line. All right. The second thing that's mentioned is the sadiq. The sadiq, and I'm using this term. This is like one of the terms you'll find it in the Quran as well, and you'll also find it utilized in the madhab of the Malikis. But it's also known as, in English, as the dowry, and the other term you'll hear is mahar, right? The dowry, but the sadiq. A marriage contract is invalid without it. Okay? It's a minimum. There's a minimum amount to a mahar, right? And so there was one time I was listening, to the Imam speak about mahar, and he made reference to what he called a crackhead dowry, right? And this also goes against those who say that a respectable dowry is what is mentioned here as the minimum. All right. A respectable dowry, or the minimum of a dowry, is a quarter of a dinar. All right, a quarter of gold, 1 gold dinar, or 3 dirhams of silver, or as Sheikh Abu Hassan he said, the amount of money that is equivalent of any of the two. Okay, so if there's money, the currency being used other than a dinar and dirham, it has to be equivalent to one of the two. All right, a dirham, I believe it is less than, I don't know, you have to get it in weight, but its size is about the size of a silver dollar, maybe a bit smaller. So let's say hypothetically the minimum of a dirham. Does anybody know the price of silver now? Anybody that can answer that? Know the price of silver? I'll get back to that. I'll come back to that, inshallah, Abdul Hakim. The amount of silver, I don't want to shoot from the hip, but I know silver is very, very cheap at its minimum. And the dirham, 3 dirhams, gosh, I want to say that it's at least at minimum about equivalent to about $50. I think it's at the equivalent of the amount of about $50. And Allah knows best. I'll look and do the research, but I know it's somewhere in that ballpark. It's not more than 100, and it's not under 50. I believe it's about $50, give or take the lowest about 40 something. That is a minimum amount that's considered a mahar, right? He says it is an obligation due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and also to the woman. The obligation due towards Allah ta'ala is 3 dirhams. So if the man fulfills the contract, the mahar of being 3 dirhams, if it's fulfilled of 3 dirhams, set up, then it's been fulfilled. And he says anything above that is the haqq, is the right of the woman. Right? A lot of people say, the mahar is the right of the woman. It's meaning what's extra, it belongs to her. Right? In essence, the mahar is the gift that you give. If a person can give a minimum of 3 dirhams, he's fulfilled the right, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Anything above that is fulfilled the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it should meet the satisfaction of the bride. Because the mahar is offered on behalf of the man. It's offered on behalf of the man. Usually how we do, and I believe that if we minimize this, if we stop this, we'll probably bring respect back to men. If you offer the mahar, or even if it's consensual in your offering, saying, hey, listen, give me an idea of what it is that you will want as a mahar. And I can tell you, I can idea, or a smooth way of asking, something that, something of her liking that you can fulfill. It's what you have to offer. If you look at all of the situations where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam married a man, especially the one man that got married for an iron ring, where the woman proposed to the Prophet ﷺ and he didn't accept her proposal. And then the man stood up and said, Ya Rasulullah, if you have no need for her, I would like to marry her. And he said, okay. And then he asked him, what did he have to offer as a mahar? He didn't ask the woman, he asked the man. And there's a couple narrations that's like that you offer is what the man offers. And reason why I say that it'll bring back respect to men, because a society, our society is a capitalist society. You know, I mean, not saying that other societies aren't, but I can only speak about our customs and practices and how it contradicts Islam. If a man cannot offer a mahar that's respectable or acceptable to the woman, you know, or if the woman, let me rephrase that, resentence that. If the woman asks for something that the man cannot afford, then you'll have certain statements, you know, such like, you know, I mentioned about the brother in his talk said you got a crackhead dowry, right? And so when you got a crackhead dowry, in your mind, you know, anything less than what you said is the standard is a crackhead's dowry, right? Which is kind of condescending, right? Because you may have a poor man, and we have to begin to understand, you know, poverty, right? Poverty isn't always forever. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who enriches you. Behind you, you know, your sustenance is already written for you. And when you act out to accumulate your wealth, that was already written for you, right? You won't get a penny more, you won't get a penny less, okay? You won't get a penny more, nor will you get a penny less. So not to dwell on that. So hopefully that's understood. So the mahar is what's offered by the man, but at minimum of 3 dirhams or a quarter of a dinar. Now, a dinar costs some bread. A dinar costs some bread, especially if you base it off the standard of gold. Now, when I'm saying cost some bread, meaning that it's going to be a lot more expensive than a dirham. Now, he says the obligation. Okay, I mentioned that already. He says even if she agrees with dispensing the entire mahar, the marriage contract is based on such an agreement is not valid. So you cannot marry a woman based off of I don't want anything for a dowry, for a mahar, right? He says that she may forego anything above a quarter of a dinar, but there's no maximum limit to a dowry. All right, there's no maximum limit to it, meaning, you know, she has to stop at such and such, such and such. There's no maximum limit, but there's a minimum of 3 dirhams. Number 3, the witnesses. It is the witnesses. You have to make a special note for this. All right. Put an asterisk right next to it if you want to. The witnesses is a condition in order for a person to validly consummate a marriage, not the condition for the marriage contract. That is according to the madhab of Malik. Right? Meaning that they have to get married. They have to get married. And the witnesses have to be informed before consummation takes place. Now, however, this isn't mentioned so that you can go and create a new way of nikah, right? All this is when you're dealing with fiqh, it's saying the brass tack, what gets down to the bare minimum, like the bare bones of a thing. Can you have a marriage ceremony with multiple witnesses? Absolutely. And the witnesses have to be male. All right, the witnesses have to be male. This is also another thing that plays part. You know, I know people used to do the four females witnesses, but that what it's talking about in the Quran and Surah Baqarah, that's referring to a business contract. All right. So the 2 witnesses have to be informed. Now, if one consummates the marriage without informing the witnesses, then therefore that consummation is fisq. You know, and all that stuff gets into that information, gets into discussion for the qadi, whoever the magistrate is, the imam, you know, the wali, the sultan, you know, whatever it is, the authoritative. See, sometimes what happens is that we kind of like study marriage on our own, and we start putting things together and we come up with our own thing. So imagine a person is saying, oh, I don't need witnesses. That's not the case. You need the witnesses. The witnesses is absolute. Just like in the Hanafi school, the Hanafi say that the wali isn't a condition for the validity of a marriage, but no Hanafi I ever known to in my existence, except the Negro, the Negro Hanafi, Shafi, Maliki, whatever you want to call him, right? That hodgepodge. He puts his own twist to it. Baby girl, listen to me. You don't even need. Once a guy start talking like this, you need to run from him, right? You don't need a wali, according to the Hanafi. So are you adhering to the Hanafi school? Well, just for this nikah, run, right? Get up out of Dodge. Be out, right? Like, yo, beat it, son. Get out of here. Click your heels, right? Go. He's don't mean you know well, right? Even if he's mistaken. Because why? And even hold yourself accountable, because before you engage in the thing, you have to have some sort of knowledge of what you're about to engage in. You can't make salat not knowing how to make salat. Even a new shahada, even under that, he will be directed until he learns the full prayer to pray in congregation. Ignorance is never an excuse. All right. So anyway, so the witnesses, and then the people, the bride and the groom, they must be qualified. All right, that's number 4. So a bride and the groom must be qualified. Meaning, this is the woman who should be free from, I guess you would say, indentured servitude, but not using the same definition as the kuffar. Okay, indentured servitude, without all the mistreatment, is basically what would be known as the Islamic slavery. I guess you can call it that, where the person is being maintained room and board, right? They're being maintained room and board. They're not given a salary. If it is a female, the male slave master can cohabitate with her. He can have intercourse with her. He could free her, and he could also marry her. If he have children, the children are legitimate. They're not illegitimate children. They're legitimate children. As a matter of fact, jokingly but truthfully saying, she becomes, her status changes to Walid, right? The mother of your children. Okay? So she cannot, if there's a woman that is under bondage in such a manner, she cannot marry except with the man too. He or she cannot marry except with the consent of the master. Right? Get off that phone. If you're not taking notes, get off of it. Without the consent of the master. All right? So in this case, there's the man, there has, for validity and conditions, there has to be a confirmation. And these conditions are 4. I think they're in the notes as well. The first one is he has to be Muslim, right? You cannot have a slave enslave a Muslim. The slave is non-Muslim. All right. Number 2, he must have discretion. Meaning, more so, he's not, he doesn't have a mental impairment. Right. Or, mental illness or mental impairment. He doesn't have that mental disability. Okay. He's not, I'm trying to refrain from using the word retarded. I know there's another word that they use now. I'm trying to be politically correct, but mentally challenged. Okay. Nor is he autistic. I'm talking about in a real level of autism. He has discretion. Okay. He's not child minded. He doesn't have a mind like a child. He has to have consciousness, right? Meaning he's not intoxicated, whether it's by something that is permissible or something impermissible. He has to be conscious, as level of consciousness. So, marrying somebody in their sleep, I don't know who would try to do that, but he has to be conscious, right? Or has sanity. And he has to have masculinity or being a male, right? He has to be a male. A hermaphrodite cannot be married and shall not be married. So let's say, for instance, they really don't fall under this category, but when the governing law is not Islamic, it doesn't permit for this to happen. So let's say you have the transgender, which is a hot thing that's growing even in the Muslim community as well. It's kind of sick, but hey. Anyway, you cannot marry a transgender, male or female. At minimum, they would take the hukum at minimum, I said. At minimum. And I'm only speaking from a leadership perspective, right? At minimum, and I'm talking about a leadership where we're under the jurisdiction of the kuffar. At minimum, he should be treated like a hermaphrodite. Because you may have a young guy that may have had the surgery and changed his parts, reversed himself. And he takes shahada. And he can't reverse that. He can't reverse that no more. He's to be treated like a hermaphrodite. Even, the legend has it, true, in the Sharia, hermaphrodite even have their own ranks to pray. But, that's a whole nother discussion. So he's not to be married, nor should anybody propose to them, right? And the reason why I'm saying you're seeing this grow in the Muslim community, I remember at one time when we were operating out of a masjid in West Philly, there was a young, I don't know if it was a male or female, so we'll say the young guy, a young thing. It was a young thing that was on the brother's side, bare face smoother than a woman. Had a nice little Caesar, nice little Caesar, low cut, what y'all call it here in Philly, a hustler or whatever, we call him a Caesar in New York. He had a nice little Caesar, right? Came in, was real sharp, dressed down to the T, real neat, but a little too neat and petite, a little too petite. And I don't remember if it was me or if it was Imam Naeem who gave the khutbah, but one of us gave the khutbah. And it was Imam Naeem, because I was sitting behind the guy. And immediately, as everybody tasleemed out, and everybody, when I say everybody, and this is a mixed congregation of American, Bangladeshi, Africans, it was everybody there, right? And so as soon as the Imam tasleem, Assalamu alaikum, right? Because he's Maliki Masih at the time. The entire congregation turned and looked at main man and was like, astaghfirullah, right? And you felt the hostility growing. And so the person who was the wali or the amir of the masjid, he grabbed me and he grabbed Imam Naeem and he grabbed the security and he grabbed I want to say young boy. I'm gonna say boy, but don't get it confused. We were confused about the gender of this guy. And he pulled him outside in the hallway area and he asked him, "Are you a man or a woman?" And the guy's voice was even sweet. He's like, "That's crazy. A lot of people think that I'm a girl, but I'm actually a guy." Right? So now I'm sitting there like, and so Sheikh, he's an older brother too. He wasn't playing no games. He wasn't talking in a passive. He didn't have a passive. His entire tone was aggressive. Like, listen, don't play with me. Right? Like, basically, like, if it weren't for so much, I'll make you go upstairs and strip down so we know that you're a man. Right? And I'm like, subhanallah, man, he on some Umar ibn Khattab type time, And I'm like, wow. And he was like, nah, we're not gonna play this game. He said, and if you're a woman, you better not step foot back in this man shit except in the attire of a woman, and you stay on that women's side. You're not gonna bring that stuff up in here, right? There was that person, and then there was some other brothers who were homosexuals. And they used to come through. And these guys, I think they were either Bangladeshi or Indian. And I think one of the brothers that used to go to the masjid, he was also a store owner, but he knew them guys personally. And whenever they came around, he was always so embarrassed because he was always apologetic. And they used to get ran out the marriage. Like, don't come in here with that. Don't come in here with that flip-flop girly stuff that you doing. You gonna sit here and act like a man. Yo, Sheikh wouldn't play no games. You couldn't come in with anything other than Islam. But anyway, I digress. So the conditions to make the soundness of the marriage, the term is istiqrar. الصحة استقرار خمسة, right? If I'm not mistaken, I believe that's what it says. Let me look on here with y'all. I'm trying to shoot that from muscle memory. Yeah. شروط استقرار خمسة. Okay. Now, so it really is just a reaffirmation of what we went over, right? So number one is that the person has to be free from bondage. The marriage of a bondsman without the consent of the master will not be confirmed as a valid marriage. Number two, the person has to have to be balagh. They have to reach the level of maturity. A little kid cannot get married without the consent of their parents or whoever's the wasiyah. And the wasiyah is basically like a deputized or authorized proxy, right? Let's say, for instance, like I have a younger brother who's Muslim, and let's say that my daughter is in New York and she's scheduled to get married, which would be his niece, and I will call him to deputize and say, hey, you're acting as on her behalf, right? Some people refer to it as wakil. I'm using the language that the scholar, which is Abu Hassan al-Shadhili, had permitted. Using the language that he used. He used the word wasiyah. All right, and she's deputized. He's deputized to act on my behalf in my absence. On behalf of my daughter. And this can also be with a person that has a biological father, but he could also, the female, even a male as well, if they haven't reached the age of maturity, meaning that they become legally responsible, where they're able to act, obtain that age, then marriage is not acceptable on their behalf unless there's some sort of authorization. This authorization can come by way of letter or by way of someone, but nowadays we have telephone and we also have email, and we also have video chat. So these things have come a little faster and it's a lot different. But back in the day, they used to have, letter, and they would send a person with the message, right? Like a messenger. So it's not acceptable. It's rejected. And if this type of marriage is consummated, even though the marriage will be nullified, the woman is entitled to that 1/4 of a dinar. All right. She's entitled to that. The person has to have independence, the ability of managing their own affair. Now, let me see something here. How in the world did I translate this? Maturity. They have to have maturity. Oh, the third one is rushd. I'm sorry. A sound mind. The person has to have a sound mind. All right. In this case, the rushd is the Arabic term used for that. That's referring to. And one thing you have to understand, and I can't emphasize this enough. You guys are students, so you have to remember this, that there is terminology that has to be okay. SubhanAllah. Now, all right. So anyway, so terminology has to, terminology is very important. You have to have your terminology down, and so even if you understanding it in English, you still have to know the terminology in order to begin to understand it from the Arabic standpoint, because sometimes some things could be misleading, right? Like the level of maturity, right? the person being mature. Just because a person is pubescent, they may be missing the rushd. They may not have sound mind, right? You can't marry somebody off that doesn't have a sound intellect. And we're talking about somebody with a mental disability. You can't marry them off, right? In a marriage. So they have to have a sound mind. And if they get married without the permission of the guardian, the guardian, he can confirm it if it's appropriate, but if he rejects it after consummation, meaning they find out after they got married and consummated or whatever, then it is nullified, and the woman, she keeps a fourth of the dinar. She keeps a fourth of the dinar. The next one is sound health, right? Sound health, meaning the person, not a person that has high blood pressure, diabetes, but sound health that where it affects the person, right? Like somebody like it will be, I think most examples most scholars use is like leprosy, right? Leprosy was a big thing back in the day. I think it was equivalent to I'm just talking about like in status to like a HIV in our time, or bubonic plague, and something like that, or to knock you off or something like that. If a person gets married and they don't have sound health, then it will be nullified. Impotency does not fall under this category. A person that is impotent, the man cannot be determined to be impotent. It takes him it has to be 12 months before he's rendered and determined to be impotent. Right? 12 months. Okay? Within those 12 months, he can try all kind of supplements or whatever he needs in order to get his mojo working. But if it doesn't happen within that time, at 12 months, I believe it's the fuqaha put on it, then that marriage can be nullified. Not, first night or whatever the case is. It has to be at least a minimum about 12 months. Same thing for the woman. You may have a woman that she may have some sort of complications of having intercourse that will fall under the impotency rule. Impotency doesn't fall under sound health. Sound health will be something like AIDS, HIV, something that's deteriorating and destroying the person. I don't think it all depends too. I mean, cancer, person stage 4, if a person decides to marry somebody with cancer, if I to my knowledge, unless something changed, it's not transmitted like that would destroy a person and highly contagious, or but sound health, you have to have sound health. It will be nullified even if it's consummated, meaning that you didn't inform the person before you married them. The word here for compatibility is kafa. All right. The compatibility is one from the statements of Ibn Rushd, that in Ibn Rushd he mentions various opinions from other madhahibs and things of that nature. None of you all are studying to be a qadi or a faqih, so I kind of like eliminate a lot of the middleman. Now, if you go on and continue on with your studies, more like that kind of student that is studying in order to obtain that level, then that's a different story. However, this class is so that you equip and have the basic knowledge. Also those who are part of the community, I can call on you, to handle certain affairs, because I know you learn enough to deal with the situation, right? However, kafa, where they're saying, what they're discussing here with kafa is the compatibility religiously. There's one mention about the compatibility that is khilaf on it. It's not about absolutely with pertaining to wealth. Compatibility. And I know sometimes we even extend it to say that compatibility also means that we should be compatible, emotionally and so on and so forth. I didn't see that being mentioned by any of the fuqaha, right, about being compatible emotionally, Although it's a hot topic because a lot of our imams are starting to mix psychology and Islam together. So you start to develop rulings based off of that, Like, for instance, I kind of it kind of frustrates me. Although this is a true statement, but what is intended by the statement sometimes is what I consider to be an exaggeration or embellishment of this. Women being considered emotional, right? The Prophet ﷺ mentioned in the hadith that they are, I want to say the proper word, the only word I'm thinking of in English, and like unstable, or deficient, defective, right? And so some people usually try to interpret it as she is unstable in her thinking, meaning like almost like to the point like like she has some kind of mental disability, and that's not the case. From what is explained and understood from some of the narrations is that especially during the time when the woman is dealing with her mens, she can be a bit irrational, meaning she, her tolerance level is low. She might randomly cry, or she might feel very passionate about a thing. And the second thing the Prophet ﷺ mentioned is that they only pray a half a month. And this is also where it gets into where you get the hukum pertaining to the haid, to the mens, right? Meaning that a woman can only have a mens up to 15 days, right? That's the maximum amount. And she can only be considered clean with a minimum of 15 days. And it's another fiqh class, and we'll get into it, but just because I'm making reference to the hadith. So during that time when she's on her mens, she's emotional and things like that. But most importantly, what is, with regards to her that puts her at that disadvantage is that she cannot pray during that time either. Right? So now what happens is with brothers, especially, trying to be condescending, you only got a half an intellect, nisful aql and things of that nature. And, and it sounds as if he's putting her down. And because it's mentioned in the narration, sometimes you can develop this psychologically that you start embracing, what is being said about you as being true. I only think half of the time. Women don't think, and things of that nature. That's not what it's talking about. So compatibility, kafah, it has to be religiously. You do not marry a fasik to your daughter who is, and I'm not talking about your aspiration. She has to be actively, an active, righteous person. That's incompatible. And a lot of times the biggest and a lot of the problems that you see with everybody crying across the board on Facebook, I believe me and Imam Muhammad was talking about this today. A lot of times they're incompatible. You marry a woman that's praying and the man is not. There's no compatibility there. Try being with somebody that don't pray. It doesn't work. Even if you do pray and you're content with them not praying, then something is wrong with your iman. right? When you marry somebody that's not compatible religiously, y'all are not compatible. I'm telling you, it's frustrating. Nothing irritates a woman, a real alpha woman. Nothing agitates her more than a shiftless man. And when I'm saying an alpha woman, I'm talking about the woman who, not the aggressive woman. That's the beta. The alpha woman is the woman who she knows her, or she plays her role to the T, and she's expecting the same for you. Nothing irritates her more than seeing you sitting around shiftless and lazy and ain't got a clue and scratching your head like, oh, what we gonna do? Right? Nothing irritates her more than that. So you take that and multiply that times 2 with somebody that don't pray. That is incompatible. That is not going to work. This is the failure of most of your relationship. And don't think for one moment you have men that are righteous and they marry righteous women. No, sometimes the women do not be compatible with the men. Sometimes we marry women that we know is going to rebel against us. And you can't get anything done when everything is in rebellion. This country right now is a perfect example of it. The entire country is in chaos, right? It's in rebellion. But amongst them, what you don't know is they have certain things in play that even when they disagree, they're still going to follow the letter of their constitution. But once you start going against that, then you have chaos. Likewise, the same thing. A household cannot be ran where it's absolute chaos. Abby's telling you one thing, Umi's telling you another. Zoj is saying one thing, Zoja is saying a different thing. It'll be utterly chaos. And sometimes we approach that person ain't on, because if she's somewhat compatible with us religiously, then she'll be submissive. Look at the ayat in Surah Nisa, ayat 34, the ayat that's dealing with nushuz. Right? Before he gets to it, he talks about the qanitat, the one, the righteous, the submissive woman. That is a ishara, an innuendo for you, right? That for and it's not just for the man, but it's also for the woman, the aspirations on how to be. I know that in our society, we have a twisted society. This is why, remember, we made reference to it last week. It is from your jahiliyyah. We don't want to drag jahiliyyah into Islamiyah. When you drag jahiliyyah and jahiliyyah, it was cute and you found it kind of sexy to have a woman that, you know, that was a little sassy with you. Hey, she's spicy. You know. But it ain't cool when she start telling you ain't put no ring on it, you ain't mine. See, that mentality can go with that, right? But when you're Muslim and they still talk to you like, you can't tell me what to do, or she hits you with you ain't my daddy roll, you're in trouble. Compatibility. She has to take it within herself to say, hey, I have to be a person that's going to work so that our family can move from A to Z. See, when you think that you can just be sassy and rebellious, like someone had posted the other day, I can't marry no weak man because I got a smart mouth and I don't listen. See, when you marry that kind of person, this type of person's mentality as an individual, they don't think that their behavior affects you. Each of y'all affects each other. The same way she has a whole breakdown and she finds out that he's cheating on her is the same way that he has a mental breakdown too if you're not obeying him. It works the same way. But anyway, I digress. So you have to have compatibility. Islam has to match. You have to have matching Islam. Now, two people on a low level, they might work out because they're not going to require a whole lot from each other, right? And it's not cool to marry somebody that's not going to pray. What I'm saying, somebody on a low level, maybe they're Muslim, no doubt. They pray 5 and fast and all that. But they may not be, you know, aspiring Imam Bukhari or aspiring Imam Malik, right? It might just be satisfied with the level that they're at. Now, then you have, hold on one second. I want to share something with you. So I'm going to have the host. I'm going to send something to the host to share with you guys. I want to show you what our Masjid Uthman Dan Fodio's Aqd, what it looks like. It's marriage contract. I want you to see what it looks like. All right. So what I'm gonna do is I want you to post it so everybody can see it, but I'm gonna send it to you right now. So you're gonna take down the notes, because as far as the notes are done, I'm done with what we covered as far as the notes. All right. While I'm waiting for her to upload the notes, if the Wali, and I believe that was what this pertaining to, this question by Sheikh Abdul Hakim, if a person is locked up, does he count as being a servant? Not necessarily, because the person's in for a crime and he's detained, so he wouldn't be a servant. Although, according to the 13th Amendment, the convict, the person that's convicted, he is considered a servant. The 13th Amendment is slavery or involuntary servitude is no longer acceptable except as a punishment of crime. Of course, they don't give you that same. They don't outright display it in that manner. But however, if you look at everything that happened during the transatlantic slave trade, you changed your name. Your name went from Mamadou, Khalil and Mahmoud and so on and so forth to Johnny and, Bobby and, even like holding on to the last names. I know some people like to argue about it, but holding on to the last name ain't nothing but basically the name of your slave owner. Right, or your daddy's slave owner, your great granddaddy, or your great 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 granddaddy, or your grandmother. That's their slave master's name, right? And so with that, they replace your name with inmate numbers. You'll become inmate number such and such, such and such, such and such, right? You won't even be referred to by your name. You'll be called out by your inmate, your inmate number, and so on and so forth. So it does resemble, and it's still not the same type of servitude. It's still not the same type of servitude. And then also too, to take this in consideration about bride and groom and about compatibility, some people do get married in jail. Now, some states, they allow you to have conjugal visits, right? And if the person is marrying through the state, in order to have a conjugal visit, they must also, and they're Muslim, they must also get married Islamically. Islamically, the other contract doesn't hold the same weight. You have to get married Islamically as well in order to have that conjugal visit with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be accepted and valid. All right. Okay, so it's $23 per ounce, and I think, subhanAllah, that's actually cheaper than what I said. Wow, I stand corrected. So about $30, right? Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'm almost sure that 3 dirhams. I would have to ask Amir Abdullah Yassin, because they have dinars and dirhams. They still have them minted as coins now for the Emirate. And 1800 and some change is developmental disabilities. Thank you. 1800 and some change for a quarter of that. And this says it specifically too, to bear in mind, Ikhwan, that the person gets a fourth of a dinar. Okay, if you consummate with a person and the marriage is invalid, it wasn't, invalid according to the things that we mentioned. Yes, I can see the contract now. Barakallahu feekum. And the marriage was nullified, based on those things that we mentioned earlier. The person is owed a fourth of a dinar, right? So it's a fourth of 1800. About $500, right? That fourth of that. So, anyway. So here, I want you to look. You see, this is a marriage contract. All right. I put certificate. I could have put contract. However, it mentions the name of the bride, the groom, the bride, the wali or wakil, the two witnesses. And it says here, if you look underneath, it mentions I, the wali, right? Ankahtu, 720, shukran. Ankahtu, right? Or zawajtu, right? If it was somebody marrying my daughter, Nkantu, right? Meaning that's what that one word means, that I marry you to, or zawajtu, right? And then you'll mention the name of the bride, right? It'd be Ankahtu Fatima, right? And then the groom would say qabaltu, like basically like I accept, or raditu, I'm pleased with her. You see here where it's mentioned the mahar, the date in the month, and of course in our case we got two dates, and khalas, that's the contract. None of the prenuptial stuff, right? And so that is what is meant by the formula, right? The formula is the pronouncement which the marriage is contracted. The formula expected from the marriage, from the guardian, is I have contracted the marriage with you, or I've given her out in marriage. And the groom would say something like I accept or I'm pleased. Okay. We'll stop here and we'll go into a little bit more of who can be married, who can't be married, and we'll mention a couple things with regards to polygyny, and then that should close out the chapter with regards to marriage, and then we'll go into divorce and we'll discuss the different types of divorce. I'm really thinking about giving a little quiz. And maybe not, we'll see, inshallah. Now $720. So anyway, if there's any comments or questions, inshallah, you can direct them to me directly, inshallah, and I'll answer them to the best of the ability. Or we can use the group, even have like little discussions based off of what's being covered, inshallah. All right. I think that's pretty much it for this week, inshallah. And I'll keep you posted in the group on the next class, inshallah. After this year's Deen Intensive that we're having in Camden on Christmas Day, inshallah. If we don't have it, because there's the pandemic going on, so if we don't have it, where people aren't allowed to congregate or whatever the case is, we'll definitely have it on Zoom. So just stay posted. As of right now, it's going on December 25th at Kuba Islamic School, Kuba School and Islamic Center, as of right now, and that's in Camden, New Jersey. But outside of that, if anything changed, we will have it on Zoom. And and we'll be going over, and there's a forthcoming book for it too. It'll be out in a couple weeks, inshallah. Maybe we'll put up a pre-order after the 1st of December if you want to pre-order it. But that's if I got everything, get it to the publisher and I know how many pages and I got a price set on it, and boom. All right. So with that, inshallah, we'll stop here. Subhanakallahumma bihamdi. Point of me mentioning all that. I'm sorry. Before I close out, is that we will begin start over doing the Farder Ain, some more of the individual obligations, meaning from the 5 pillars. But I believe I'm going to emphasize and focus on Salat for some time. So we'll be going over all those things connected to the prayer. And I'll keep everybody posted. Check the website, sign up for the emailing list, so we send out things, or even with our newsletter, we'll put that, even announce that stuff in there as well, inshallah. So with that, enjoy your evening, everybody. May Allah Ta'ala reward you for taking your time out to do some studying and learning tonight, inshallah. And may Allah Ta'ala make this a benefit of us for us, especially, considering that gathering right now is limited because of the virus, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك واشهد ان لا اله الا انت واستغفرك واتوب اليك. السلام عليكم ورحمه الله تعالى وبركاته.